Welcome, everyone, to Mythstorie, a podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, with my permanent guest, Cammy. Hey, Cammy.
Hey, Bryant. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, so I had a quick click. We had our we're live streaming this now. We're not live streaming. Excuse me. We're streaming this through StreamYard. We've been doing great live shows, and I wanted the little leave background, so I had to click that on real fast. I felt like we were in a void of blackness, and I wanted to change that real quick. Welcome everyone. As I said, Mythstorie, every week we pick a vast array of topics from straight up myth, Hercules, to historical events, and we like to discuss them by giving you a slice of the story, and then we'll kind of talk about some of the history behind it. Today we have a fun one: the Sword of Damocles. That's got to be cool, right? Sword Damocles.
Yeah.
This guy was a gladiator who killed 100 men, right? That's the story, right?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay, so all right, well, he was a hero that fought a three-headed lion.
No.
No, that is not the case. And so, you may, if you're listening, you may have heard us a lot. I've mentioned, the whole point of the show is to be very approachable to these topics. I have never heard of the Sword of Damocles. I might have heard of that name, but I did not know this. It's a parable, a lesson, a story that we're going to recite for you in a minute. So with the Sword of Damocles, again, this is a parable. This is a story and an ancient Greek lesson. So while it might not be, some cool Russell Crowe inspiring action, it is still a really interesting story, and I love too because it's actually popped up in recent history. It was used a lot in the 60s, and then even more recent than that, in the early 2010s. So without further ado, though, Cammy is going to give us the story. It's a nice story. It's just a straight up story with great sources, and Cammy, take it away.
Okay, cool. So I did use a primary source for this, as primary as you can get for 4th century BC.
Yeah.
So I used Kikero's Tusculan. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, and you may know, people may know him as Cicero as well.
Mm-hmm.
Cicero's kind of a common name. I've been listening to Robert Garland, who's like a historian. He does pronounce Cicero, but Kikero, the C's a little weird in Latin. So just in case you're hearing that, you think it's weird. But yes, in his Tusculan Disputation is the English word. It's like Tusculean Disputate or something like that in Greek or Latin, whatever it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and I used an English translation for this because nobody wants to read Kikero in Latin. It's terrible. But I just don't like him. We can get into that in a different episode, though.
Yeah.
So Project Gutenberg had this on, so Gutenberg.org was the site I used. And I'll just get started. The tyrant, Dionysius, was never fond of flattery. He took the throne of Syracuse when he was only 25 years old. He learned in that time that those who flatter have little substance and are of no use to a king. One such man, Damocles, never passed up a chance to compliment the king or his kingdom, so Dionysius decided one day to teach this man a lesson. After hearing praise upon praise for his lovely gardens and elegant robes, Dionysius invited the victim to his house that night to dine as a king and rule over the city until the dinner was over. Damocles was so excited for the prospect that he ran home and bathed in fragrant oils and dressed himself in his finest dinner clothes. It seemed like ages before it was time to meet back at the palace. When he arrived, he was draped in a regal robe and a crown was placed on his head. He took great joy in greeting every subject and the true king himself. They seated him in the king's place at the table, and the party enjoyed entertainment while their wine was being poured. The night went on in merriment until Damocles mentioned how much he liked being king and how much he would love to have this place at the table again. It was then, while the man was at his happiest, that Dionysius ordered a double-edged sword to be lowered over the head of Damocles as he sat surrounded by gold adornments and the handsomest of servants. Damocles was instantly afraid and asked the king to retrieve the sword, for it might kill him. It was hung by a single horsehair. But the king let his true intentions of this night be known. He spoke to the crowd, saying, Damocles thinks he wants all the riches of the kings, but he does not know the treachery that hangs over the head of any man of power. For at any instant, betrayal is a real threat, and you may be murdered for the virtue of your position. Damocles could not eat and sat in nervous misery for the remaining hours. He could not help but look at the sword, which would surely cleave him in two if the horse's hair did not hold. Finally, the dinner ended, and Damocles ordered the man to be released of his duty as king for the night. Damocles gratefully hurried from the table and humbly said goodbye to the king and the guest and hurried to the safety of his own bed.
Wow, like no wonder this guy was a tyrant. Like how hard is like, oh, it's hard to be king, but let me make sure you understand this by literally dangling a sword. Like, come on, Dionysius, do you have a sword dangling above your head at all times? Maybe metaphorically, but do you literally have a sword dangling around your head? Because I'm pretty sure that Damocles is now going to plot to kill you because of this. Like that, it's just like I get it, and this ties in really well for I mentioned this I think 4 or 5 episodes ago. I'm making my way through. I've been listening to some of the Great Courses audiobooks lecture series that they have, and I started this one by this renowned historian Robert Garland. It's called Greece and Rome: An Integrated History of the Ancient Mediterranean. And it's really cool. He breaks it down so well, this stuff. And again, I'm really new to all this. I know the big stuff like Zeus and Hercules, but it's really cool to see the integration. And this is really important because Cicero, Cicero, he was probably the golden age Latin writer for was it 1st century AD? Yeah. So born 106, died 43 BC. So yeah, he was super important to Latin. And what I've been learning in Garland's work is like how when Rome took over Greece, they say like Greece was the captor, made Rome the captor, because the Greek culture really flourished and stuff. And this is a cool sign of like seeing this old story. So like, the story Damocles and Dionysius. So this takes place in Sicily, on the coast of Sicily. That's where Syracuse is, and which has been important for history for forever. This has been an important part of the Mediterranean. Sicily is super. It's got these great volcanoes that make the soil rich. It's one of the bread baskets, aside from Egypt being a bread basket. Like, you got Sicily, you're golden. And if you don't know, the Sicily is the ball that the boot of Italy kicks. So that big ball right outside that big boot for Italy, just so you know. And so, yeah, we're talking. So this is supposed to take place during the classical period of Greece. So this is like 4th, 5th century. So Rome's just a little kid, little baby growing pretty close by, getting there though. But Greece as well, these places are well established, and there apparently was this guy Dionysius, and we really know of his existence basically from sources like Cicero. It's said that the 1st century AD poet Horace, who I think was Greek, Roman 1st century BC poet Horace. So around the same time, he also makes an allusion to the Sword of Damocles as well. So there's not a ton of other things until a little bit later, but a handful of people do mention him throughout history. Another one, Gaius Mycenaeus, who was around, again, 1st century. So 70 BC to 8 BC is when he was around. So these people kind of mention, and it's used as an illusion. And what I'm kind of gathering from my personal stuff with Garland is the learned elite, they use these stories, and they use like Greek tragedy and then eventually Roman works to discuss things like rhetoric, to basically practice to be like a lawyer or a statesman, and practice speechcraft, public speaking and stuff like that, which was really important skill back then. So like, to me, I'm thinking that this story, Syracuse was a place, Sicily is a place, these are all existing. There probably was a guy there. Did this happen in this way? Who knows? But this sounds like it sounds like a totally plausible story. Wikipedia likes to bring up how it kind of inspires Shakespeare and Henry VIII. His quote, what is it? I've got it here. Uneasy lies the head that wears a crown. And that it's kind of obvious that that's what it's supposed to mean. Like Dionysius is this again tyrant, and we kind of see why, because he likes to hang swords from horsehairs above people's heads. He's saying like, yeah, I got a great life, going on, but it's hard, dude. Like, it's really hard. Like, at any moment, this sword could snap and I'm gone. And so that's kind of it. And Cicero, who later, when he wrote about it, that's kind of what he was sort of saying. I got a great article from ThoughtCo that wrote a lot about this by K. Chris Hurst, and they just sort of mention this is Cicero was writing. This was a lot of reflection. Think like Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. All the big philosophical movements were floating around. And Cicero, again, Golden Age Latin writer, which was a huge deal at this time. He was sort of saying, it seems like, find happiness. Don't be afraid of death. Almost. So like, yes, like great power, great responsibility is kind of the thing, or great danger is writing on both ways. Dionysius, he rules so much, but it could all go away, that kind of thing. But I think that's kind of what that it's our fear of death, and here we go. So thought says Cicero meant that death looms over all of us, but we should try and be happy regardless, which to me sounds kind of like the Stoicism. Happiness, don't fear death, just try and live life. And in a way, like, don't, like, what's going to happen to Syracuse if Dionysius isn't doing his crap? Who's making that sword? That's the thing that upsets me the most. It's like, you are literally putting that sword there. Is Damocles gonna have a sword there if you don't put it there? No, it's not. It's only because you put the sword there. So stop hanging swords above people's heads, and maybe we'll all be okay for a little while in Sicily. So the funny thing that's happened is it's changed. It's been brought up kind of here and there. Again, we kind of allude to it in Shakespeare. It wasn't directly quoted. But in the 60s, JFK used it, and it was a directly Cold War nuclear impending doom. The sword of Damocles is reigns over our head. That's my JFK, and
it's very good.
Thank you. And I loved this too. I listen to NPR. I know Cammy does, and there's a 2011 article I found. So that was probably like when I started listening to NPR. I just graduated high school a year before that. And NPR had an article, and it was called Sword of Damocles reference sometimes misused. And apparently, and I couldn't figure out why it was being used, but apparently like in a week, everybody and their mom in government was using this term. And like I'm linking the article in this episode, so take a look. You can listen to it too, as well as read it. But it's several politicians, and they quote, like, we have the sword of Damocles hanging over our heads. With the sword of Damocles overhead, if not, we're going to default. Well, the good news, obviously, is that the economy now doesn't have the sword of Damocles hanging over it. So again, they're totally misusing it here. They're thinking like it's impending doom. Almost, I think of like Edgar Allan Poe, pendulum, like impending doom. But that's not what it was sort of supposed to mean. I mean, it's obvious that danger is around us, and but it doesn't make sense. Even Russians during the 60s used it to refer, like they wanted the sword of Damocles. They were saying, like, have this like thing to keep you in line, like one wrong move, bro, and that horsehair is gonna snap. And it's but that's so dumb. I mean, it's just so dumb.
It reminds me of, did you ever watch Rocky Horror Picture Show?
I did not, and there was a song in that.
Yes,
I haven't. I'm sorry.
That Rocky Horror sings, and he said, I actually have it right here. So he says, the sword of Damocles is hanging over my head, and I've got the feeling someone's gonna be cutting the thread. And then he talks about, like, basically he's just woe is me, like, for several lines. And
I like that. And I think you can use it in that context. There's obviously a lot you can pull from here. And what I wanted to make is, Cicero is a great resource. Again, great writer for this time period, but it's because he's interpreting it as well. And like the other guys that used it from this time period, Horace and that other dude, they were using it in as parables as well as allusions. That's how you spoke. That's how you made arguments, and that's how you deferred things. That's how you understood the world was through this. And I use the regular sources, Britannica. ThoughtCo was the interesting one. That piece, it was a really great piece because it focused on Cicero's writing in particular. But even like History.com had a nice little thing about it. But it isn't just like an impending doom thing. Dionysius, the tyrant of Syracuse, he's kind of memorable. Again, this is pretty long time ago. We don't have like super hard evidence other than these sources mentioning the Sword of Damocles parable. But he and his son, it could be either one of them actually, because it looks like they were both Dionysius, and they're called Dionysus is the Greek god of wine and drunken revelry. Bacchus is the Roman equivalent, and there's sort of an allusion there too, because these tyrants, one of them, I think it was the son, the son, the younger Dionysius the younger, was known as being a drunken, not so great. Oh, okay. So even Plutarch actually reports that he was known to have led a licentious life in Syracuse with lots of drinking parties. Okay, so there we go. We've got Plutarch on it, done and done. Plutarch's the man, right? And so, there's these well-known records of these guys in Syracuse doing this, that their names kind of mean something to these parties. But that like, it sounds, Damocles needs to learn a lesson. That's what it sort of sounds like at first, is like that old Damocles, he's just like brown nosing this, and he doesn't understand that I'm getting like effed up every night on wine and like shirking my duties.
Like having a great time.
Right. Exactly. That's the thing. Like, what is going on in Sicily? Like, you're fine. Sicily's fine. It's fine like 90% of the time. Like, it's fine. Like Romans, Muslim invaders, but even after that, it just gets better. Okay, like Sicily, it's like a party boat, a giant party boat that keeps accepting cultures. And there's a fight about it, and like Normans and blah 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 blah. But afterwards, they're like, holy crap, we have this awesome architecture now. We got these awesome new nuts you brought from India. I don't know. But it's pretty good. I imagine 5th century Syracuse doesn't have too much going on, doesn't have too many problems. So that's I think the interesting thing here. So the takeaway, it looks like there's plenty of sources that do kind of show us that Dionysius, this leader, there was a tyrant of Syracuse. If Damocles is real, if this tale happened, who knows? It could have been an example of a euhemeristic event. Something weird happened in Syracuse, and then word spread through the traders to the mainland. We don't really know exactly if this happened, but the parable stands. It's definitely worth, as far as literature goes, analyzing. I mean, Cicero and many others thought so. And I think the big thing is it really got kind of corrupted over time, and it just meant
so. What was the original meaning then?
It's up to you. It's up to your philosophical mindset. It's just pretty clear that it's not impending doom. Cicero, though, it like, again, ThoughtCo asserts is saying, like, you got to take it easy. Like don't fear death. It's not even like a live life to the fullest. I don't remember what philosophical school Cicero.
It can't stop you from fulfilling your duties, and it can't stop you from being happy. Is what
exactly. That's what I'm thinking. It's
because I always thought it meant impending doom,
and that's the very obvious sort of treatment. And I think especially how you tell the story too, and like the way you told the story was really nice, because it kind of sets Dionysius as like, this guy doesn't realize how hard it is to get drunk every night. I'm really dehydrated and it's frustrating. But it's so obvious that of course leaders have problems, but you also like have everything. Like, right. Oh, woe is me! I'm a Roman senator and 600 Greek slaves and like my 4 plantations. What am I gonna do? Like, no, come on! Like, everyone has a figurative sword that's on them, and whether or not it's gonna pop or not, it's not up to you at that point. I think that's kind of what it's saying.
You can't let anxiety ruin your
life. Life can be as fleeting as a horsehair having too much tension. And it's just like, are you gonna be like Damocles and freak out about it? Or are you gonna be like Dionysius and make sure you terrorize other people by putting physical barriers in their lives to make them scared? That's the 2 paths of life. Okay, everybody. So don't be like Damocles. Yeah. Dionysius, eat the rich, become the rich, hang swords above their heads. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a really cool story to look into, and Cammy did a great job of reciting it. That's really how it goes. And we do have some cool sources that reference it throughout the 1st century AD. That was, or at the turn of the century. That's really cool to see. And it's just a really cool literary device. I'm sure there's tons of like English teachers everywhere that are discussing this in classical schools and all that. And it's a really cool discussion. So, and if you hear this, just know many people will use it as impending doom. It's not really, it definitely makes sense. I mean, yes, you could kind of use that, but there's more to it than that. And the idea is Dionysius set it up for Damocles, who was sort of saying like, oh, you got this, it's so cool, I wish I could be king. But there's a little bit more to that. And people like Cicero analyzed it and said, look, we've all got our swords hanging above us, but you just gotta like stay the course. If the sword snaps, the sword snaps. You know, you'll be okay either way. So thank you for joining.
Or you'll be dead and it won't matter.
Or you'll be dead. It's a sharp sword. Gladius are sharp and they're great. They'll take you out. Don't worry. Now we're going back to Edgar Allan Poe. But I hope everyone enjoyed this. Please let us know what you think of the show. If you have any suggestions about what we should talk about. It's been a great year so far. We've got some really fun topics that we're alternating between. And we've also been working with Cody, our friend, on his YouTube channel, Popular Opinion, pop as in the pop figures, the Funko Pops. We're pulling myth themed ones like Bigfoot and stuff and talking about those. So you can check that out through Popular Opinion, as it's spelled, or through our Facebook channel and stuff. Facebook is a great way to get in touch with us. Mythstorie, Mythstorie, all one word with an IE at the end instead of a Y, at Gmail is another great way to get in touch. But you can reach out to Cammy and I individually. I've got links in our show, through Pinecast in the podcast description link. We're also on YouTube, though. You can watch us talking about this and see the crazy thumbnails that I and Cammy have been coming up with. This will be a fun one to make. I did make a Discord for us recently that I know everyone's loving. Yeah, so there's a link in the description here for that. It's going to be small for now, but feel free to join in. That's a great way for you to interact or talk or give feedback. I mentioned this. I haven't mentioned this in a while. Give us feedback. If we did not mention an important part of this, or if you think we forgot something or omitted something or got it wrong, let us know. Absolutely love to go back, even if it was episode 22 where Cammy said something horrible. Let us know so we can make fun of Cammy, please. We really want to make sure we don't miss an opportunity to. But everyone, thanks for joining us again. We really appreciate you, and you've been making this show a lot of fun to do. I think that's it. Have I blabbed enough?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent, everyone. Well, we will see you next time.
Oh.